So today we have a question that we are ready to debate. This year, Victor Wembanyama had arguably one of the best rookie seasons that we have ever seen. He averaged 20 points, 10 rebounds, 3.6 blocks, and he finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. Now, we want to ask the question if Wemby had the best rookie season of all time. I have my thoughts ready, but first I want to hear from you guys on what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think for a first point, I think the fact that we're even considering that shows how good Victor was this past season. I mean, 21 points, over 10 rebounds, one of the best rim protectors in the entire league. And I feel like he has a case to be up there with, in terms of individual seasons, as one of the best rookie of the year, if not the best, because yes, you could point to team success wasn't really there at all. They're one of the worst teams in terms of record in the entire NBA. But I think a lot of these other rookies that we're going to discuss were operating with slightly better rosters, leading to a little bit more team success. So I definitely think he's in the conversation as the best rookie of all time.
I think he had a great rookie season. Let me start by saying that. I think his rookie season was one of the best ones we've seen in a while. However, when we start talking all time, I will say I don't know how high I have it personally. I probably have it a little bit farther down than you guys have it. It's just, we're going to get into it, but I think while he played well, I just think some of the numbers for some of the past rookies are a little hard to mimic in today's game.
I see Jake kind of jumped the gun on what I was going to say. He mentioned a lot of the other rookies having better rosters around him, which to some degree I think is true, but I don't think it should be used necessarily as a penalty for some of the things that they achieve. Like, I'm thinking more recently, I'm just thinking of guys like Magic Johnson, Tim Duncan, who they pretty much got the job done. And I think Tim Duncan, it wasn't his first year, but Magic, he got the job done in year one. Tim Duncan made an All-NBA team his first year, also was all defense. And you just look at the stuff that they achieved, and the whole point of the game of basketball at the end of the day, like, yeah, the individuals are cool, but I think winning is a big portion of it. And that's not a knock on Wemby. Obviously, he just doesn't have the roster. But I think when you're able to go to a team and impact that immediately, I feel like that does have a good impact on it. But you can also look at it from the standpoint of statistical and individual accolades, and I think Wemby might have a slight advantage there. But it's also hard for me to just give it to him because of what some of the other legends before him achieved.
Yeah, and I feel like the surrounding team around these rookies is extremely important to look at, because you think about Tim Duncan and how dominant he was when he was a rookie. You know, you mentioned the All-NBA, the all-defensive team, but he was also playing alongside David Robinson, who's obviously a Hall of Famer, one of the best centers of all time, and that's nothing close to what Wemby was working with. I mean, all these players, they're, solid young players, have potential, but we've been talking, I feel like, this whole draft process about pretty much no one on San Antonio is untouchable except for Victor Wembanyama. So even if you talk about with Magic, he was playing with multiple players who would go on to be Hall of Famers. Obviously, Kareem was in his older time in his career, but there were other players on that team, even just thinking about the Winning Time series that we watched and how some of those players were legends. So I feel like there is a little bit of a difference between what like Magic and Tim Duncan were working with in a roster versus what Victor was working with, and he still was able to contribute so much on both ends of the floor.
Yeah, I think that definitely goes both ways, though, because while, yes, Wemby really didn't have any real help this year, I think it's hard as a rookie to come into a team and make your mark as like one of the better players right away. Like, you have guys like Tim Duncan who came in with David Robinson, someone who plays basically around the same position he played, who was a multiple-time All-Star, multiple-time, like, he's one of the best NBA players of all time. And he came in and was able to make his mark at his position right away. The team improved and wins a lot. I know David Robinson was hurt the year before, but they got a ton more wins. And then he also individually finished 5th in the MVP voting. Like, to do that with another top 75 all-time NBA player on your team is like, that's impressive. And I think Wemby overall will be a better player than a lot of these guys. Like, possibly, like, they have really good careers, so it's kind of hard. But I think he might have showed more flashes of like promise and dominance in his season. I just think of when we look at actual production and the impact they had on their team, I think Wemby kind of just is a little bit, he's like a half a tier below.
I will also advocate a little bit for Wemby too, just because I know there's people who are going to be out there. Like, if we have younger fans who are like, oh, we're done with the 90s. And then they're going to be like, oh, they were playing against plumbers, or the people in the 90s weren't as good as the league is now, which I think to some extent there is a little bit of truth to that. But at the end of the day, I still feel like you just have to look at what these guys did and how they were able to achieve so much in such a short amount of time. Like, I just feel like you can't, obviously, being the greatest of all time and like where you rank among other greats, that's different from did you have the best rookie season. And I'm like you, Cameron. I think Wemby will be better than a lot of these guys on this list. But just objectively looking at what some of these guys were able to do in their first year, along with the individual stats that they put together, like when you achieve something so young, like from a team standpoint too, I think that just kind of adds to your mythic, legendary status. So I think those guys kind of have that in their favor.
And I do feel like one of the marks that kind of knocks Wemby down in some of the argument is you can't really go just off stats and say that Wemby is the best rookie, because you've got Wilt Chamberlain averaging 37 and 27 rebounds as a rookie, obviously in the 60s. But if you're going just pure stats, you think Wemby's, blocks number and him being able to shoot threes somehow makes him the best rookie. Well, you can't just go pure stats because other players have it over him, because then at that point you kind of have to look at other stuff like accolades and team success. And then again, there are other examples that kind of clear Wemby in that area. So the argument is really tough. I think maybe, I guess, a more interesting discussion is like who of these like legends are behind Wemby in rookie year. On the NBA list here, they have LeBron in his rookie year being a lower mark than Wemby's rookie year. So do you guys think that LeBron James, one of the best rookies of all time, one of the best players, some people think he is the best player of all time, do you think his rookie season gets cleared by Wemby this year?
I would say it is better than LeBron's simply because they were in similar spots. I mean, LeBron obviously helped the Cavaliers win more. Wait, hold on. Scrap this, because I actually want to look at their record.
Okay. While he looks it up, I'm pretty sure I think I know it. I want to say LeBron definitely did have, he almost got them to the playoffs his rookie year. But however, there was some controversy with his rookie of the year. I know Melo believe he deserved it as well. So it's close. But I think something interesting to me is that if we look at the list of like just all-time great rookie years, like at least on NBA.com, there's no, like 2004 outside of Wemby is the most recent one. So I think there's something to be said about, at least back then, it was easier to come into the league and have an immediate impact. I don't know if that was because of age or because just how the league was back then, but I think now we're seeing less and less rookies have that kind of immediate impact. So that I will say, even though I don't think he had the best rookie year of all time, him being able to produce at this level, at this age, is really impressive because it hasn't happened in a long time. That we've seen similar numbers. Like Paolo had a pretty good production in his rookie season as well, but it was just the all across the board, like points, rebounds, assists, blocks. Like even his steals numbers at certain points in the year were pretty impressive. So his impact that he had, it might not have led to a lot of wins for the Spurs. It's something we haven't seen in a long time.
Something that kind of surprised me about Victor's rookie year was he didn't even get an all-star appearance. Like, it's completely different to be All NBA versus an NBA All Star. And I would have thought, like thinking back now, most of the All Star game is a lot of just popularity vote. And I would have thought the Victor fan base would have been strong enough to get him in that zone. But obviously, he's competing with a ton of elite centers and front court members, especially even in the Western Conference. But I feel like if he got that All-Star, I think we could have been looking at Victor's rookie season a little bit differently, just because other than the Rookie of the Year, that's pretty much the only accolade he got. Like, he was close to DPOY, he was close to an All-Star, but if he could have actually got those, I think we probably look at his rookie season completely different if he does pull that Defensive Player of the Year over Rudy Gobert, or if he is able to make the All-Star game over some of those, high-level front court members in the Western Conference.
Yeah, to me, I think he should have won DPOY. Kind of feel like he got robbed. As far as All-Star, I know he did struggle a little bit at the beginning of the year, especially when they were playing him at the 4. Like, he still played good, and he definitely had, like, a ton of highlights, but you definitely saw a bump in his production after the All-Star break, and overall, just in general, when they moved him to center. And they were starting, like, Jeremy Sohan at point guard for a good part of the year, so when, like, Trey Jones actually got to start at that position, like, Wemby's production improved. So I just think it was almost like just how the Spurs season went. It was kind of like almost designed for him not to get All-Star and all that. But, I mean, I wouldn't say that was necessarily because of him. I just think it was the position he was in.
Okay, so this is kind of off topic, but I got curious and I wanted to look it up. But the last rookie to make an All-Star team, and some might argue he wasn't even a rookie at the time, but the last rookie to make an All-Star game was Blake Griffin in the 2010-2011 season. He averaged 22 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists. And I just think that is crazy because I do remember the hype around that time. I'm probably dating myself a little bit, but because I remember he had tore like his ACL his first year, I want to say. Then he comes back and he has this insane athleticism. Like, bro was a walking highlight reel. And I don't think the Clippers even had a good record that year necessarily. So it does kind of beg the question of, like, how did he make it, but Wemby didn't? Now, I know, like, some of it is voting, but I think for the reserves, it's mostly just the coaches picking the spots. So, but even then, I feel like you have to acknowledge, like, what this guy is doing and be like, he's going to be there eventually, so let's just go ahead and get him in here.
Yeah, honestly, I feel like this might be the only season of Wemby's career, or maybe one of the only ones that he doesn't get that All-Star vote. I know it's competitive in the West, but I feel like he's going to have so much hype going into next year, especially if they can add some talent in the offseason this year. So this 21 points, 10 rebounds, over 3 blocks a game could be like the floor of what Victor can do, which, I mean, maybe doesn't make him the best rookie of the year ever, but it could lead to a lot of great things.
Yeah, it's like, to me, that was the most impressive thing watching Victor as a rookie is that while, like, this is probably the worst we're going to see him. It's like, knock on wood, like, he doesn't get hurt. He, like, keeps progressing at, like, a normal pace. 21, 10, 3.9 assists, and almost 4 blocks a game. If that's your floor, like, that's the starting point, he has a lot of, like, it could get scary. It could get scary. Like, he didn't have a point guard. Like, he had no one who could, like, pass to him for a good point of year. Like, the post-entry passes from the Spurs were awful for most of the year. And, like, I remember there was, like, a good stretch of the year, his teammates would just look him off. He would have people sealed. They wouldn't pass it to him, like, and he still was able to put up numbers that even made this a conversation. Like, if he keeps progressing at this pace and at his size, like, if they ever get him some help, it's going to be a problem.
You know what I think is going to be the scariest thing? And I'm just looking at it from, like, a playoff adjustment, like, winning standpoint. Like, you look at a lot of the guys who are the number one option, the big struggle for them, or, like, the leap that they have to make, like, looking at a guy like Anthony Edwards, even though he's been having a good series, his playmaking has long been a thing that's been critiqued, and in some of the games, it stood out more than others. Essentially, all I'm saying is Wemby's playmaking ability, I think, is going to be scary to watch because he's shown just in his rookie season that he can make those reads. And obviously, he's 7'5". So, like, people are going to try to double him, throw bodies at him, but it's not going to make that much of a difference. And I remember even the first game I watched, like, I fully watched last year during that October scrimmage versus the G League Ignite. Like, that was something that stood out to me, and he maybe only had like 2 or 3 assists that game. But it's just like he can read so easily over double teams that I'm not sure that if he's going to be a guy who's a primary ball handler for them in like winning situations, I'm not sure that that's going to be something we even have to worry about because he can already do it.
Yeah, his playmaking is definitely like one of the skills that make him like really like scary. Is like when he gets to a playoff situation, like he's going to be a player kind of like, I know this is kind of hard to say, especially how good of a passer he is right now, but it's almost similar to like a Jokic. Like, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. Like, if you double, he's good enough to pass it out and find the open man. If you don't, he's going to cook whoever's in front of him. So it's like, with Victor, he's not that level of passer yet, but the feel is there. Like, you can see, like, he has a good feel for where double teams are coming from. He finds the open man pretty well. And he averaged 4 assists this year, and the guys who were passing it to were barely, like, they weren't, let's just say they're not Nikola Jokic's teammates. I won't say anything bad about the guys, but they weren't high-level players that Jokic is playing with. So, like, if he's already at 4 assists, like, imagine what he can be when he even adds more of a post game or more like to his offensive bag to where you have to send the double and the reads get even easier. Like, for reference, like Jokic averaged 2.4 assists his rookie year, and throughout his career, he didn't average 4 assists until his second year, and then it just kind of climbed a little bit every year. It went from 2.4 to 4.9, 6.1, 7.3, 7, 8, 7, and then 9.8, 9.
Yeah, because that goes up as he gets more trust from the coaches and stuff like that. But I feel like a lot of what is holding Wemby's status as the best rookie down is the inability to like elevate the record for his team. They had the same amount of wins, I believe, as the year before when they drafted him. But when you look at what he does, not only on offense, but mainly on defense, I don't know how much more he could have given the Spurs to make them better. I mean, he led the league in blocks as a rookie. He's averaging over 20. He's given you over 10 rebounds a game. You guys just mentioned how good of a passer he was pretty much from day one. I mean, do you want him to go miss the shots for the other team so that they can win the game? Like, there's not much more that he could provide to a team that would have led to more team success. I don't know how much blame you can put on his rookie season and make him not one of the greatest just because the rest of the team couldn't get it done.
Yeah, for me, the argument really necessarily isn't like team-based. Like, I feel like you can't, like you said, you can't penalize him for like the team and like the position he was put in. Like, some of his numbers look the way he does because the Spurs were just experimenting for half the season, playing people out of position. But I just like, at the end of the day, he had a historically great rookie season. When you talk about the best, like the absolute top of the top, I think you have to start to nitpick. Like, even though it's not his fault he was put in bad positions, like, you're judging guys, we're talking about the best of the best all-time players here. So it's like, you have to kind of pick at certain things. And I think that's just a bigger thing to pick at than anything for like a Magic Johnson who won the finals and a finals MVP.
I was going to address like how's his efficiency. I have the stats pulled up, but as a non-ball knower and a producer of this podcast, I'm not quite sure how knowledgeable I am of said topic.
It was solid from what I remember. It was solid, but the problem is like your team does play a part in like your efficiency as a player as well. So like, for example, Jokic gets a really big bump in like advanced statistics because of his assists. But if his teammates don't make the shot, then his assists go down and he's not the same level of players we
Or if
know
he feels
do.
like he has to force something, or
Like you put Jokic on this Spurs team, they're probably better, but how much more can he really do than giving you like 20? Like let's say his scoring is higher and his rebounds are around the same. His rebounds are around the same. He's not going to, block as many shots as Wemby did this year. Maybe the passing will help draw a little bit more attention toward him, and he'll get some of these other guys on the Spurs open. But I don't know how much more like adding Nikola Jokic and replacing him or replacing Wemby with Jokic would have done in terms of the team record for the Spurs. Like it would have gone up, you would imagine, but I don't think replacing Wemby this year with Jokic suddenly puts the Spurs like 20 games up, like some of the impact on winning we're seeing on some of these other rookies. Like Shaq had a plus 20 impact on winning with the Magic. I don't know if Jokic replacing Wemby this year adds 20 wins to the Spurs.
Yeah, the few, because just his skill set right now to where it's like it's almost hard to take him out of the game. Like Victor at times, if his teammates weren't passing him the ball, like he can dribble and he can go get it, but like you could see some of the areas he struggled with is when people will crowd his area on the perimeter. Like it's just harder for him than it is for Jokic to like create offense for himself by himself at this point in time. But so I think in that perspective, Jokic probably would have added a good amount of wins. But do I think they're like a title contender or anything with him on the team? I don't think so. I think they're probably like a first round out playoff team to missing the playoffs.
Another thing to think about too is even when he was on the Nuggets and they didn't have Jamal Murray, like they were in the playoffs, but
They were 60,
Yeah.
barely scrapping to get
so
in.
it's like you still need those supporting pieces around you. But I definitely think that Jokic would add a boost just because I think he's probably one of the greatest playmakers we've ever seen. And Wemby, I know I talked about his passing ability, but he still is pretty reckless with the ball at times. And I think that's not even necessarily a skill thing for him. It's just kind of learning to.
It's not necessarily even a bad thing. Like especially with like rookies and stuff, like you want them to go out there and like try things. Like I think a lot of the season for Victor, at least from the Spurs perspective, was like, let's see all that you can do. Like what do you have to like how far, like exploring like the limits of his game. Like what all can he do? What can't you do?
I think that the fact that he's willing to make those passes and that he's shown that he can do it, although he does have a high turnover rate, I think that's what bodes well for him in the long run. And that's why I'm even more high on him than I think I've been on other star players. But it's just, he has an all-around game. But going back to our leading argument, I just don't know if he had the best rookie season of all time. But I think we can all agree that he's probably going to be one of the greatest to ever do it.
Okay, so just in closing, best rookie season of all time, yes or no?
Wemby? No. I'm going to have to give it to Magic.
Jake?
I want to cape for Wemby here and give it to him, but the Magic Rookie of the Year with the Finals MVP is, I think, puts him over the top. He did have the better team, though.
And before you old heads come out here and be like, oh, Wilt Chamberlain had 37, 20 rebounds a game. We know, but that was so long ago that, like, the game wasn't even... I feel like it's not even the modern era of basketball. So I feel like you just can't look at it the same. Context does matter, whether people want to agree with that or not.
I'm not arguing nobody about somebody that played 30 years before I was born. It's just not.
To be fair, we've never even seen him play.
I don't. Sorry, but for me, I would say as well, he's up there as like, I would say he's definitely probably top 15, top 10 rookie seasons of all time. I have a hard time putting him in like a top 5 rookie all time season. So